Now, Julian Assange was too unwell yesterday to attend his last-ditch High Court bid against extradition to the US. He's facing espionage charges over the WikiLeaks revelations all those years ago. The case enters its second day today. Joining us right now to discuss that case is the director of The Trustful, a documentary about the WikiLeaks founders' case. It's Kym Staton, who is in the studio with me right now. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Julia.
And I said a little bit, I'd assumed this documentary, The Trustful, it's out on the 15th of March in cinemas, although it's already premiered last Sunday. That you would have spent time with Julian Assange, but of course he was in the Ecuadorian embassy for all those years, and then of course he's been in Belmarsh prison ever since, fighting these extradition charges to the United States. So you've actually had to make do with archive footage, but also talking to his family, his wife Stella, to those who've been supporting him, John Pilger and otherwise. Just tell us first of all why you decided to make a documentary about Julian Assange. Are you supportive of his case, or were you just interested in the topic? What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, well, I'm very supportive of his case, and usually when you make a documentary, you come from a neutral perspective, and so you hear sort of equally both sides of the argument, and maybe devote both equal amounts of time to each side. But as I got into interviewing people and exploring this issue and researching, I very quickly realised that this is a case of oppression, and it wasn't appropriate for me to give equal side to people that are doing an incredible injustice and breaching his human rights with the way that they're treating him.
OK, now, this is his last-ditch bid in the British courts. He's in the High Court appealing, well, his lawyers are appealing against the latest judgment for him to be facing extradition to the United States. This is where he faces extraordinary number of charges, 17 counts of espionage, 1 charge of computer misuse. If convicted of all those, he could receive a prison term, these laughable US prison terms of up to 175 years. American authorities have said it would be much lower. They basically say, though, that he was involved in the hacking into their military computers. This, of course, was carried out by Bradley, now Chelsea Manning, who has already served time, obviously, for breaching, the requirements of his employment contract. I've never really understood why a foreign national, an Australian national in Julian Assange, on foreign soil, was committing a crime in the US, breaching their secrets. He has, if I were doing it to Britain, I perhaps could be a traitor to Britain. I've not signed the official secret. I've not signed up to be an employee where I have the information which I'm only able to see on condition I don't share it elsewhere, as Chelsea Manning was. I find it extraordinary that these charges are being taken seriously by the British authorities at all.
Yeah, look, it is absolutely absurd, because what we have here is an Australian citizen who was working in London at the time, being charged under an antiquated 1917 Espionage Act, which is meant to criminalise spying, and he's not actually spying in the first place. What he's doing is acting as a journalist and publisher, publishing the information provided by a whistleblower, which is not for the purpose of spying. It's not for state secrets or the codes of important secret agents or anything like that. It's war crimes.
There were war crimes that he exposed, and again, he's the publisher, he's a journalist, and I accept all of that. And there were lots of things which we had a right to know and we should have known. There have been various exposés, including other exposés, not by him, but about the fact that the American government was spying on its own citizens against its own constitution. However, he also was working with Guardian and other newspapers in America, and lots of people who worked with him were very unhappy about the fact that he was willing to put out information that wasn't redacted, that put an awful lot of people, innocent civilians and people who were working, as spies on behalf of their countries, at risk, put their lives at risk. And he was far too willing to say, no, I'm just going to put this stuff out without actually any protection for those people. He was irresponsible.
No, that's actually a myth that is perpetuated continually, that he didn't redact. That is not true at all.
He did redact some, but he didn't redact everything that could have actually put people at risk.
Well, if you're talking about the Afghan war logs, actually, it was some Guardian journalists who put out a book where they published an access code in the book recklessly. In that book, Julian Assange did redact. He went to great pains to. He stayed up all night and all day redacting all the names personally, and he was the only one at the time who did that, whereas the Guardian staff couldn't be bothered, and so he took the responsibility. So it's
he should have taken. I mean, it is when you have that sort of access to that information, you do need to have that responsibility.
Absolutely, and he
Benedict
did.
Spence, let me ask you about this. I mean, do you support this hearing? Do you think that the British government should be, and ultimately it will come down to the government to make this final decision?
I think none of this sits particularly well with me, partly because I do think that the things that he's being charged with do not actually fit the crime. I think it's very sort of convenient.
Do you think he committed a crime at all?
I mean,
Bradley Manning did, Chelsea Manning did.
Yes, well, that's the thing. And then it's down to a question of, well, actually, is it the responsibility, what documents are sort of covered by official secrets legislation? Do you then have some responsibility not to? But if it is, revealing things like war crimes, then actually, yes, this is very important. We've been talking all morning and afternoon about Israel and war crimes. Well, ultimately, if we're going to hold people to a very high standard, that should absolutely include the US government. It should include the British government as well. I think part of the issue with Julian Assange is he doesn't cut a very sympathetic figure because of just how he is. And so I think the story has been slightly pushed to the side. He doesn't garner a lot of sympathy. There were the allegations of sexual assault as well that took place in Sweden, I believe. And so broadly speaking, I think it's one of those things where you look at the person and you think, I don't particularly like this person.
I don't think he's a very likeable person.
And that potentially clouds whether or not this is something that should be acceptable. But it's also, let's be clear, it's a case of the US government leaning on the British government. And as British government, we like to portray ourselves as being independent and free-thinking and fair, but actually it's a question of them saying, now you're going to give him to us, chaps, and you're not going to make too much of a fuss about it. And that does appear to be what's happening. He shouldn't be being held in Belmarsh, of all places, whilst this is happening. I do understand the whole thing.
He did breach bail conditions before, and he did abscond to the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years.
But the place where we send our very worst terrorists, come on, that's overkill.
No, I mean, yes, certainly there is that issue, isn't there? And the basically what he could face when he goes to America. It's not going to be a slap on the wrist. There was a big concern for a long time with being solitary confinement. He could face basically dying behind bars. The American authorities said, no, that wouldn't happen. But of course, what reassurances would they have? Lots of this case is revolving around the claims that Julian Assange, he suffered from depression, that mental health problems, and that actually that he would kill himself if he were actually sent to America. Is that what his wife and his friends and those supporters have told you? What are their concerns?
Well, it was revealed in a prison search a couple of years ago, early on in the extradition trial, that he had hidden a razor blade in his cell. And that's because, which was revealed by Niels Melzer, a special rapporteur on torture who visited him in the prison, that he was, if he was to be extradited, that he would take his life. And understandably, that's why initially the extradition case
Couldn't anyone
was
threaten
won.
to do that? And we've had other cases, haven't we, like teenage hackers into the defence department's computers have made the same claim. So I do wonder about that. Look, your documentary, though, is out in cinemas 15th of March, The Trust Fall, following this case. We shall see what the result of this case is, no doubt, very soon. Appreciate you joining us, Kym Staton. Thank you for that.